Welcome to my scientifically informed insider look at mental health topics. If you find this video to be interesting or helpful, please like it and subscribe to my channel. Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question asks if I can take a look at the mental health and personality characteristics of the Joker. Now, I'll be looking at a few different representations of the Joker, including the one that we see from the trailer for the movie The Joker coming out in 2019. So, as I'm making this video, the trailer's out, but the movie's not out. Now, of course, with the other movies, I've seen them. They've been out for a while. So I'll be taking a look at, again, the Joker through several different instances. Now, at this point, I usually say something like, I'm not diagnosing anybody here, but the Joker is a fictional character. Now, I will be mentioning the actors' names that played them, just so I can refer to the correct Joker as I'm going through this. But I will only be analyzing the character, not the actor who played the character. So we see, again, several different iterations of the Joker throughout the years. I know that there are a few I'm not covering here, but the ones I'll be looking at will be Jack Nicholson's Joker in Batman, 1989, Heath Ledger's Joker in 2008, the movie The Dark Knight, Jared Leto, who played the Joker in a movie released in 2016, Suicide Squad. And I won't be looking at like Lego Batman, but I just wanted to mention Lego Batman, that movie, and the Joker in that movie, because I really just liked that film. And of course I'll be taking a look at the Joker as played by Joaquin Phoenix, as we see in the trailer for the movie The Joker. So this would be a good point to issue a spoiler alert for all those movies, except for Lego Batman. Again, I'm not going to cover that one. Just a good film, worth watching. So when I talk about the mental health characteristics, I'm talking about psychopathology, mental disorders, as we see them in the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. And when I talk about personality, I'll be using the 5-factor model of personality, the big 5. So openness to experience, conscientiousness, extraversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. I always remember these through the acronym OCEAN. Now, of course, for each iteration of the Joker, the mental health and personality characteristics could be a little bit different. And again, I'm looking at 4 representations: Nicholson, Ledger, Leto, and Phoenix. Those are the actors that played the Joker in all those movies. So moving back to 1989, Batman, we see Jack Nicholson playing the Joker, Michael Keaton playing Batman. I think this representation of the Joker is a little dated. I think Michael Keaton did a better job as Batman as compared to Nicholson and the Joker. I think Batman held up a little bit better over time. But either way, Nicholson did a relatively good job here, and it was a fairly straightforward character development. We saw quite a bit of screen time for Jack Nicholson, and we see that in this movie he was kind of like middle management in a criminal organization. Then he fell into some acid, was disfigured, and took over that organization as the crime boss. He had a grand scheme to harm people, pretty typical of what we'd expect from a villain in these type of movies. His characteristics included being irritable, aggressive, violating society's norms, being impulsive, irresponsible, jealous. He liked admiration, had a sense of entitlement. He was arrogant, sensation-seeking, fearless, lacked empathy, remorse, or guilt. He was sadistic and had fantasies of success and power. In this movie, for the Joker anyway, we saw a clear motive for power. So in terms of mental disorders, maybe we see something here like antisocial personality disorder and narcissistic personality disorder. Now, in addition to the characteristics I mentioned, we see the Joker is laughing a lot. He appears to be fun-loving, spontaneous, wants to have a good time, maybe elevated mood, perhaps hypomanic, maybe in some cases even manic. But here for Nicholson's Joker, I'll probably go with hypomanic. So this is consistent with bipolar II disorder. The 5-factor model for this Joker would be high openness to experience. So somebody who has a good imagination, they like fantasy, they appreciate art, they're intellectually curious. We see all these characteristics here. Mid-range conscientiousness, and I'll talk more about this later, how this trait is really kind of split. We see some facets that would score high and some facets that would score low. I would say extroverted, low agreeableness, and low neuroticism. So that rounds out the 5 factors for, again, 1989 Batman. Moving to The Dark Knight, 2008. I really think this was the best representation of the Joker. Again, just like we saw with Nicholson, 89, there's a lot of screen time here for the Joker. And essentially, this Joker had a lot of the same characteristics we saw with Nicholson's Joker, except the acting, I think, was simply better, and the character was expressed in a more intense manner. Ledger's Joker was more vibrant, unpredictable, and dangerous. In addition, he had a relatively complex philosophical motive when compared to other Jokers anyway. And this was different than what we saw before in other action hero type movies, and of course different from Batman in 1989. So he had kind of a take on society that was different than simply like acquiring wealth, right? He had, again, a relatively complex philosophical motive. Even still, the criteria for antisocial personality disorder and narcissistic personality disorder are likely still met, although Ledger's Joker was more fearless and sadistic, and his fantasies didn't necessarily have him being successful. So, interestingly, a little less narcissistic. We don't see a clear motive for power like we do in Batman 1989. Still, we have that elevated mood, and that could be bipolar 2, although it could even be bipolar 1. So instead of hypomania, we might see mania in the case of Ledger's Joker. The 5-factor model, I think, would be the same, except maybe lower conscientiousness and lower neuroticism. So a little less organized and a little bit more emotionally stable. Now in 2016, we see Suicide Squad. I really liked this representation of the Joker, but we don't see a lot of screen time because of the role the Joker had in this particular movie. He really wasn't the star of this movie. He was really the most clearly psychopathic and narcissistic of all the Jokers, and arguably as dangerous as Ledger's Joker. He was even more fearless, and we really saw here a primitive and extremely straightforward representation of the Joker. I think this Joker, again, though, was still quite entertaining. All the same possible mental disorders could be here as we saw with the other Jokers, and the same thing as far as what we see with personality, again, more psychopathic and narcissistic, though. So this moves us to Joker 2019, again, based on the trailer, because at the time of making this video, the movie's not out, only the trailer. But what we see here is really an origin story, exploring the character of the Joker in depth, in kind of an emotional and dramatic way, something we really haven't seen in any of the other movies I talked about. The 2019 movie takes place in 1981. We see that the person who had become the Joker is a failed comedian, and this movie is supposed to be a standalone, but it looks like a sequel might be possible. So this is the first representation we see that really addresses mental health in any way. In the trailer, we see the Joker's talking to some type of therapist, and he's saying he's critical of her performance and that he always has negative thoughts. And just even with this, again, this is more insight into the character than we get in the other movies. Just the fact that he's talking to a therapist and mentioning that he has continual negative thoughts. So these negative thoughts could be related to depression, like major depressive disorder, or they could be consistent with bipolar disorder. We don't get the same clear sense that he has psychopathy or narcissism, maybe a little bit, but definitely not as clear as what we have the other Jokers, where those characteristics are really pronounced. Now, we see in the trailer that he takes a lot of punishment. He gets hit with a sign, he gets punched, made fun of, put down. We see this part at the beginning where he's making faces at a kid, and the mom admonishes him for trying to entertain the kid. So he's trying to be funny, and he's just not being successful at it. People don't think he's funny. He's not well liked, he's not well understood, again, not successful, and maybe lonely. Although, again, that's not really clear from the amount of information we have just in the trailer, but I'm guessing he's lonely. This is the only Joker where I guess the audience is really supposed to feel sorry for him, to appreciate that there are reasons why he became the Joker. He was ridiculed and assaulted. He had reasons for rebelling against the system that rejected and hurt him. He had reasons for wanting to dismantle that system. Now, thinking back to 1989 with that Batman, we learn that Nicholson's character, before he was the Joker, actually killed Bruce Wayne's parents. So he was always bad. There's no effort in that movie to get the audience to sympathize with Nicholson's Joker at all. The audience only gets more angry at him when his specific criminal history is revealed. We see from The Dark Knight that Ledger's Joker tells different stories about how he obtained the scars on his face. So we are to assume, I think, that he had a rough childhood, but we don't really know what happened. A bit more sympathetic of a Joker than Nicholson's Joker, but overall we don't have a lot of sympathy for Ledger's Joker either. With the Joker played by Phoenix, the audience is getting a look at a much more detailed picture, a character study. This is really an unusual move for this type of movie, a movie about a villain. We see no mention in this movie, at least in the trailer, of Batman, so it's not really good versus evil, but rather an exploration of how a villain is created. This is really the first Joker we can truly analyze. I'm not sure this is a good idea for a movie, but it does look pretty interesting, so I'm willing to give it a chance. So if we take a composite of all of these different representations of the Joker, and we form just one Joker here, so we're really just taking these characteristics and putting them all together, we're left with a Joker who is psychopathic and narcissistic, but the experiences that he had growing up may explain those traits. Are these characteristics we see in the Joker actually realistic, right? So again, this composite of the Joker. Could there be a person that has the personality that we see in this Joker? Is this even really remotely possible? Well, it's certainly possible to have comorbid antisocial and narcissistic personality disorders, as well as bipolar 1 or bipolar 2 disorder. Again, bipolar 1, we see mania, bipolar 2, hypomania. So in terms of the mental disorders, yes, those mental disorders could all appear in the same person. Now, with both types of bipolar disorder, we would expect to see depression. Depression is not technically required for a diagnosis of bipolar 1, but it is technically required for a diagnosis of bipolar 2. We usually see depression in either disorder, though. So keeping this in mind and looking at this combination of mental disorders, which again, the combination is possible, but with this combination, this would not result in the behavior that we see with the Joker. With these disorders operating at these severity levels, it would be difficult to stay organized enough to plan and execute highly elaborate crimes that we see the Joker commit. He would have to be calm and stable at all the right times, and euphoric at all the right times to get that balance of effective criminal leadership and exaggerated happiness. Now, from a personality point of view, we also run into some problems in terms of how realistic the Joker is. So we're talking about somebody here who has high extroversion, but they're not high scoring on every facet. They're actually kind of splitting the facets. So all personality traits, at least in the 5-factor model, have 6 facets, and they tend to move together. So if somebody scores high on a few of the facets of a particular trait, they would tend to score high on all of them. But that's not what we're really seeing here with the Joker. Now, specifically with extroversion, we see high excitement-seeking, positive emotions, activity, and assertiveness, and maybe even high gregariousness, but low friendliness. So it would be unusual to have that one facet be low and all those other facets be high. So we wouldn't expect to see that. Looking at neuroticism, we also see both high and low facet scores. We see somebody who's low in vulnerability, so they can remain calm under pressure. This is common with psychopathy. Low in self-consciousness, so they're not embarrassed easily. I mean, the Joker dresses up in this way and kind of acts in an unusual manner. He's not really worried about being embarrassed. He's not worried about negative attention. The Joker doesn't mind getting attention for the wrong reason. But at the same time, he has feelings of depression, is impulsive in a sense that he can't resist temptation, and he's hostile. Now with conscientiousness, we see the same unusual split. We see someone who appears to have high confidence, self-discipline, and achievement striving. These are the skills that help the Joker effectively run a huge criminal enterprise. But at the same time, we see low dutifulness, that is, somebody who breaks the rules. We see somebody who's low in deliberation, they tend to rush into things, and low in order, somebody that doesn't mind chaos. And I think this is really the case for all of the representations of the Joker. And of course, I think would be the case for a composite. So the Joker really tends to make a mess of things. So across these 3 traits anyway, extroversion, neuroticism, and conscientiousness, we see facet levels that are highly unrealistic. Rarely would somebody split a trait in this way, with extremely high scores on 2, 3, or 4 facets, and extremely low scores on the others. So could somebody like the Joker exist, excluding some of the superhuman behaviors we see in the movies? Technically, yes. Technically, somebody could have those mental disorders and those personality characteristics, but it would be extremely unlikely. So I know whenever I talk about topics like this, like the Joker and psychopathy and narcissism, there'll be a variety of opinions. Please put those opinions and thoughts in the comment section. They always generate a really interesting dialogue, As always, I hope you found this description of the mental health and personality characteristics of the Joker to be interesting. Thanks for watching.